Hey guys, it's Cosmic Skeptic, and we hit 400,000 subscribers. Well, nearly. You can see behind me, or maybe you can't, I don't know if it's too blurry, that we're nearly at 400,000 subscribers, but by the time this video goes out, we should have hit it. Now, obviously, I want to spend all the time in the world thanking you, especially people who've been here since the beginning of the channel or near it, but also new subscribers, and especially my supporters on Patreon for helping to grow the channel to where it is today. But I don't want to bore you with thanks because I do that every single time I hit a milestone. I thought we'd just jump straight into a Q&A as a way to celebrate this new milestone. So the first question comes from Instagram. What was your Oxford interview like? This is a really interesting question. I actually get asked it quite a lot. There's this strange mythology surrounding Oxford interviews, especially for new applicants looking up what interviews are like. You constantly hear stories of prospective students being tested in these weird and cruel ways, like the tutors are trying to catch them out. But it's not really like that. I mean, an interview at Oxford, in an interview, a tutor is really just trying to gauge whether or not you're going to be a good student for the course. The interesting thing is that this means that they don't actually care that much about your knowledge of the subject. You might get asked about some of the books you've read if you've mentioned them in a personal statement or something like that, but they're not actually interested in, if you can name all of the philosophers or if you can, run through a particular argument or something. A lot of the time, they're more interested in seeing how you deal with information. So they might throw something completely new at you, knowing that you have no idea what it is or anything about it, but just want to see how you're going to engage with it. But they can also do things which will throw you off a little bit, but they're not doing this maliciously. They're usually just doing it to see how you'll handle the situation. My theology interview for St. John's College, which is where I ended up being enrolled as a student, when I sat down in the room, the first question that they asked me was, "What do you think we should ask you?" So I'm there thinking to myself, what kind of a question is that? What do you think we should ask you? How the hell should I know what you want to ask me? Like, I'm not the one sat in your chair. And I kind of panicked. And I ended up basically avoiding the question entirely by saying something like, I could tell you something to ask me about, but that would imply that I know a thing or two about the subject and that I want you to ask me about it. I think you'd be more interested in, asking me about something I've never heard of before. And so, yeah, I could tell you what to ask me about, but that would imply that it's something I already know about. And I don't think that's what you're really interested in. So obviously this was just a blatant dodging of the question on my part, but the way that I did it, the way that I kind of handled that panic, I think, showed to them that I'm, able to think on my feet or something like that. And they quite liked it. They liked the answer. Interestingly, I later reflected on this interview and thought to myself, if I had time to really think about it, what would have been a good answer to that question? Like, what would have been the best answer? And then I thought to myself, well, what I should have asked is, why would an atheist want to study theology? That's an interesting question. That's what you should ask me. Why should someone like me, who doesn't believe in God, want to study theology? But the funny thing is, I later was meeting with the tutor who'd originally interviewed me, and we'd gotten to know each other a bit at that point, and I was talking about the interview, and I said to her, do you remember that that's what you asked me? You said, what do you think we should ask you? And I told her, I should have said, why would an atheist want to study theology? And her face just kind of like dropped almost. She looked at me and gave me this impression of like, oh, no, you definitely shouldn't have asked that. And the reason is that although she is a theology tutor at my college, she's also an atheist. And she actually gets quite annoyed when people assume that you have to be religious to study theology, which you can probably understand. I mean, like, if she's dedicated her life work to studying theology and everyone's just asking her, why the hell are you doing that? You can imagine that might get a bit annoying. But essentially, what I thought was actually like a really good answer to the question would have potentially ruined my chances of getting in because I might have just rubbed her up the wrong way. But of course, with a different tutor, like, that question might have gone down really well. They might have thought, yeah, that's a fantastic place to start a conversation. So the main thing that taught me about the Oxford interview process is that it's fairly arbitrary. I mean, they have, put things in place such that it's not completely arbitrary, as it used to be in a time gone by when people would just let in or not let in on essentially a whim. There's some standardization of the process. For instance, there now has to be at least 2 people in the room. It can't just be the tutor and the student. But in terms of, what's considered a good answer or what's considered a good line of conversation to go down, it's still pretty much completely up to the people who are doing the interview, right? And so what I would recommend if you are preparing for an interview at Oxford or Cambridge is see if you can get an idea of who's going to be doing the interview. Look at the faculty list, see if you can work out who might be the one sat across the table from you. Look at their research interests, try and find out what kind of a thinker they are. That way you're less likely to be left out in the dark like I was a little bit. And part of the reason that I may not have, performed as well as perhaps I could have done is probably because I didn't actually prepare basically at all for my interview. Reason being that I know that everyone kind of says this, but like I really didn't think that I was going to be getting into that university. I didn't even consider applying to Oxford for the longest time until a friend drunkenly convinced me to do so in a cocktail bar. He helped me write a personal statement, put it together, helped me roughly know what was going to happen in the interview process. I basically chose a college at random, showed up, and just spoke to the tutors. But the interesting thing is that because a lot of other people had essentially over-prepared, they go into the interview, they're nervous, they've got their list of things that they might want to say, they've got things they want to mention, they've reread their personal statement over and over and over again, and it can come across as, a little bit stiff. I think one of the reasons that my interview went well and I was happy with the way that it went was because I was essentially completely relaxed. It was something I hadn't really properly prepared for. I didn't overthink it. I just went in, I sat down, and I had a conversation, because at the end of the day, these people are just trying to get a feel of the kind of person you are and the way you think. And the best way they're going to get that is just by essentially having a conversation. If it seems too prepared, if it seems too contrived, then they're going to see through it. They want to know that it's actually you talking, you thinking out loud, just so that they can get to know what kind of a thinker you are. Another question from Instagram: what brings you a sense of wonder? Now, this is an interesting question. Of course, the obvious things that bring me a sense of wonder are things like, gazing up at the night sky and all of this kind of stuff. But one of the things that specifically just blows my mind every time I think about it is music. And I don't just mean how when you listen to music, you get this kind of weird sense, this emotional state that's created by the things you're hearing, but I mean like music theory, like the way that notes are put together, the way that vibrations can just occur in the air and hit your eardrums and create emotional experience. I find that absolutely incredible. I used to consider myself something of a musician, and so I tried to learn a little bit of music theory. Can't say I got very far, because it turns out it's quite a difficult thing to wrap your head around, but every single time I learned anything about the way that chords are put together, the way that one chord can substitute for another chord and serve the same emotional purpose, just some arrangement of the same 12 notes, just the 12 notes are all that exist in Western music, just rearranging those notes in different ways and across, time can bring about very distinct and identifiable emotions. I mean, you can feel not just happiness and sadness, but you can feel longing, you can feel nostalgia, you can feel grief through this rearrangement of notes. That just completely astounds me, and I almost don't want to learn more about music theory because I want it to remain that incredible mystery. What's your opinion on the vegan options are too expensive argument? Well, the first thing to note is that a lot of the time when people make this claim that veganism is more expensive, that's actually incorrect. And of course, this depends on where you live in the world and where in your country you live as well, of course. But a lot of the time you'll find that what people have done is they've gone into, a fast food outlet, they've gone into KFC, and they've seen that the chicken burger is less expensive than the vegan burger that they've just brought out. And they think, well, look, veganism's more expensive. But that's not really the case, right? That's not the stuff that vegans are eating. Most vegans, at least those who've been doing it for a while, are eating beans, they're eating rice and lentils and vegetables. In other words, they're eating some of the lowest cost per calorie foods on planet Earth. In fact, I've had friends that I know personally in Oxford telling me that, veganism is more expensive. And what I always do is I say to them, listen, I will come on a shop with you. I'll come on your weekly grocery shop, and you can show me what you usually buy. I'll find some vegan alternatives, and if the overall cost ends up being more expensive, I'll pay the difference. I've never had to spend a single penny on that. But there are, of course, also some places in the world where it is genuinely more expensive to be a vegan. For instance, if you're an Inuit living in northern Canada, vegetables can actually genuinely be very expensive. But the thing to note in cases like this is the definition of veganism. Veganism is by definition, according to the Vegan Society, a minimization to the highest extent practicable of all forms of animal suffering. And the key word there is practicable. And the other thing to note is that this is how veganism is defined, right? Veganism isn't defined as an elimination of animal suffering. That's not even possible. Everyone's responsible for some animal suffering. The definition of veganism is about a minimization to the highest extent practicable, which means that as long as you're minimizing the animal suffering that you're responsible, even if you're still causing some animal suffering, you can still call yourself a vegan. So one of the most interesting implications of this definition of veganism, which is the definition that most vegans, as far as I can see, subscribe to, is that even if you're still responsible for animal suffering, even if you're still eating animals, you can still call yourself a vegan so long as the reason you're doing so is because it's genuinely impracticable for you not to. So if you live in a place where you really can't be a vegan, That's a bit misleading because you can still be a vegan. What you mean is that you can't eliminate all animal products from your diet. But as long as you eliminate them to the highest extent that you practically can, you can still call yourself a vegan. It's similar to considering someone in a situation of necessity, right? If you were on that famous desert island with the pig, I think you'd be justified in killing the pig to survive because you genuinely need to, right? It's not practical for you to not kill that pig. But I think, once you leave that island, you can still call yourself a vegan even though you killed a pig and ate it because you literally had to do so, right? And so if you're living in a situation where you have to kill animals to survive or be responsible for animals being killed to survive, then I think as long as you're contributing to that as little as you can, the fact that you do contribute to it somewhat doesn't stop you from being able to call yourself a vegan, or at least saying that you agree in principle with the vegan philosophy. Do you have a favorite poet? Yes, my favorite poet is Philip Larkin. What's your view on politics? Not a fan. Don't like them. What are some things people don't even realize are animal products? This is a really interesting question. Everybody knows, of course, that animal products are in our food, and most people are aware of its presence within our clothing as well, but people generally aren't aware of just the extent to which animal products are embedded in our society. One of the interesting things, actually, is when people accuse vegans of being forceful or pushy, or forcing other people to, come into contact with an observation that they don't want to think about. The thing to note is that really this is the other way around. I mean, we can't leave the house without having to engage with some kind of animal products as a reminder of animal suffering. When you get into a taxi, you might be sitting on a leather seat. You might pay with currency, which in the UK contains animal products. You'll see billboards, advertisements all over the place for the new KFC bargain bucket or whatever they're doing. In fact, as I mentioned in a previous Q&A, I've been working on a book, kind of loosely speaking, and I've just opened up the notes because I wrote something about this when I was preparing to write this book. The way that I answered this question in those notes was to say this: animal suffering is everywhere. It's in our food, our clothing, our furniture, our sports, our medicine, and our cosmetics. It's in currency, alcohol, backpacks, violins, guitar amplifiers, Bibles, tires, blankets, phone cases, wallets, and fireworks. I am writing these words while sat on the skin of a dead cow. The only place I can think of where animal suffering is truly nowhere to be found is in the moral consideration of the average human being. A question from Twitter: what's something you wished you realized earlier in life? Do I really need to answer that? Oh, I guess one more thing that I kind of wish I realized is that Christopher Hitchens isn't actually very good at philosophy. Another question from Twitter: has your relation to friends and family changed in any way after going vegan? Not exactly, not really. I mean, it's changed to the extent that if I'm with a friend or a family member and I'm eating a vegan meal and they ask me why I'm vegan, they don't need to ask twice. These conversations weren't really being had before, and sometimes those conversations can go on for a long time, sometimes they can get heated, and so in terms of there being this new thing to argue about on the table, that's kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. But generally speaking, my interactions with my friends and family haven't changed. The one big thing that has changed, however, is that since going vegan, most of my close friends have also gone vegan. I think this is partly due to the fact that when I first went vegan, it was due to reading Animal Liberation by Peter Singer, as many of you will know. And I started saying to my friends that this book is fantastic. It's got such amazing philosophical argumentation. And I said, listen, I will buy this book for you on the promise that you just read the first 20 pages. And, most of my friends like reading books, they like owning books, they're always looking to have a new book in their collection, so they took me up on it. They thought 20 pages, no problem, if you're going to buy the book for me. So I did. I've now done that for approaching about 20 people that I've basically bought the book for, free of charge, and just said, listen, I'll buy this for you if you just read the first 20 pages. And I think something like 16 or 17 of those 20 people have now gone vegan. Peter Singer's Animal Liberation is just an amazing tool to use in trying to convince people to give up their commitment to animal exploitation. Another question from Twitter: favorite atheists/theists online? Great question. Most of you will probably be well aware of the collaborations that I've had with other atheist YouTubers like myself, people like Genetically Modified Skeptic, Rationality Rules, Holy Kool-Aid. These are friends of mine. They're not just kind of content that I enjoy consuming, but they're people I know now. So I'm pretty sure that if you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know the kind of atheist YouTubers that I interact with and like to watch. As for Theists, it kind of depends on exactly what you mean by favorite. I mean, I like different channels for different reasons. I really enjoy Capturing Christianity, Cameron Batuzzi. He's hosted a bunch of debates that I've done with other people on his channel, and I've always found him to be a very fair and impartial host. I also really love the quality of his videos, his production style, that kind of stuff. I also really enjoy Justin Brierley as a theist, and you'll notice the theme here. These are all people that I've collaborated with, because generally speaking, if I see some religious content that I actually enjoy, I'll try to reach out and engage with them. And Justin Brierley is one of the best. I made a video responding to one of his videos way back in like 2016 or 17 or something. I say that as if that's a really, really long time ago. Now, I didn't realize when I made my response to him that he was the host of a popular radio show called Unbelievable on Premier Christian Radio, which is a show that basically puts Christians and non-Christians together for debate and discussion. I got an email from him basically saying, "Hey, I saw your video. Do you want to come on the radio to discuss your objections?" And because this was like right at the beginning of my channel, I was incredibly nervous, but I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds like a really good opportunity. So I showed up and did the debate and had a great time, and I was then subsequently invited back by Justin to debate Frank Turek, which has over 1 million views on my channel now. It did really well. I debated Max Baker-Heitch on his channel as well, and I'm actually going back again soon to debate none other than Bishop Barron, which I'm really excited for and I hope you'll be keeping an eye out for. And just like with Cameron Batuzzi, I've always found Justin to be an incredibly fair host and a great guy. He's also come on my podcast where we discussed Christianity, where he wasn't hosting, he was actually, taking part in the discussion, and I really enjoyed that, and so did most of the people who listened to the content. Justin has also recently started a TikTok account, and one of the videos that he posted on there got something like 2.1 million views, and he's now got like 70,000 followers. So, I mean, yeah, fair play to him, I guess, for becoming TikTok famous. And, there are just so many people that I've interacted with at this point since I've been doing this for nearly 5 years now. So many atheist YouTubers that I've watched and enjoyed and collaborated with, so many religious YouTubers that I've watched but also debated. People like Jonathan McLatchie, who I debated a little while ago, you might remember. He was really nice when we had this debate and I first met him. We went for dinner first just to get to know each other, and since then, we've kept up contact. We sometimes chat. He's a really nice guy. I enjoyed debating Trent Horn. I thought that he was a very kind of thoughtful and fair opponent, even though kind of I don't necessarily like what he's saying, but the way he presented his case and the way that we conducted ourselves in that debate, I think was pretty good. At the very least, it's better conduct than I've seen in, shall we say, some other debates that I've done in the history of my YouTube channel. Oh, and of course, William Lane Craig, who I almost forgot, who came on my channel a little while ago, came on my podcast. He's got a bit of a bad reputation within the online atheist community, but the conversation that we had, I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought was incredibly engaging and thought-provoking. And again, it's had really, really good feedback. And it's one of the things that I've learned from debating my, shall we say, philosophical opponents, is that, there can be a tendency, and I certainly used to have a tendency, to go into these kinds of discussions and debates almost in bad faith, thinking like, this person's a charlatan. They're just, they're going to straw man me. I'm just here to win the debate and show how flawed their way of thinking is. It's like, you're going to have a better time if you just go in and think, I'm actually just wanting to have a discussion here. Essentially, like, if I go into a debate not genuinely thinking that I could come out feeling like I've changed my mind or that I've lost or that I've been beaten by the other person's arguments, if I don't think that's even a possibility, then I'm wasting my time. That's not to say that I think anyone has actually succeeded in doing so yet, but the thought is there. So that person asked about similar channels to mine that I enjoy watching, but I've got another question on Twitter here. Do you often watch YouTubers or channels that are dissimilar to yours in terms of the types of videos they make? And if so, who? I enjoy watching music-related content, so whether that be kind of breakdowns of music theory, but also performances like the NPR News Desk concerts I think are fantastic, as well as like So Far Sounds, that kind of stuff. As well as there's this YouTuber called Harry Mack. He's a freestyle rapper, and he's been going on Omegle asking people to give him like 3 random words and just creating the most incredible freestyle raps that I've ever seen in my entire life. I actually started watching him back when he had, I don't know how many subscribers, but it was less than me, like he was a small channel. And I remember watching him and thinking, this is great. It's a smaller channel that I can support. So I'd comment on the videos and say, this is great. He has since then completely exploded with this Omegle series and completely overtaken me in subscribers as well. But I'm actually really glad to see it. I always thought that he deserved way more subscribers. Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, like that guy's just incredible. Who's the greatest guitar god? B.B. King? Favorite Dostoyevsky novel? That would have to be Notes from the Underground. When you think of Dostoyevsky, you probably think of his like longer novels, like Crime and Punishment or The Brothers Karamazov. They can be quite intimidating. If you're like me and you don't actually like the process of reading that much, it can put you off the idea. But if you want to get into Dostoyevsky, Notes from the Underground is a novella. It's a very short book. I think it's about 100 pages long, and it's fantastic. It's a great introduction to his writing, so I'd recommend starting there if you haven't read any before. And finally, another question from Instagram. Is Oxford worth the hype? That's, of course, a difficult question to answer. The only thing I can really answer is whether it's worth the hype for me. Everybody's experience is entirely different. And not just because, like at any university, everybody's experience is going to be different. But within Oxford, you've got something like 37, 38 different individual colleges. And all of these colleges are completely independent. They have their own chapels, they have their own set of tutors, they have their own dining halls, they have their own gardens and quads and everything. It's completely independent from all of the other colleges. So if you go to Oxford, there are at least kind of 37 sub-experiences that you can have depending on which college you go to. And then within that college, you're going to have individual experiences as well, depending on the subject you study, depending on, where in the college you live, if you live in the college or if you live off-site, the kind of people that you're interacting with, all kinds of things. But for me, I can say that, I've roughly enjoyed the work that I've done at Oxford in terms of the papers that I've studied and things, but there has been a lot of dry academic stuff that I've had to get through that I didn't really like. If it were just that, I don't think it would be worth it. The thing that makes it worth it is the experience that you have outside of the classroom, outside of the lecture theatre, the kind of people that you meet in the pub when you've just been to a debating society and you're getting a little bit drunk and you're debating with somebody that you've just met until midnight when they kick you out. Those kinds of things are what make it worth going to. I've met so many people. One of the best things that I did with my time was going along to the events hosted by the Christian Union, including, by the way, a debate between Justin Brierley and Rationality Rules, which is available on YouTube. That was a great night in Oxford. But I was going to these events and meeting with all of the kind of philosophically minded Christians that Oxford had to offer. I got to know them, became friends with them, and had some of the best discussions and most challenging discussions about philosophy that I've ever had. I was more challenged in my philosophical convictions by those conversations in the bar with those guys than I was by any of the reading that I'd done, by any of the kind of subject material that I've been studying and the papers I've been reading. Most of the actual intense philosophical reflection and changing of minds came from the pub. This all, of course, means that because of COVID, because of the pandemic, none of that's been available to me. And so I've felt like since COVID has been affecting the university experience, since they sent us home, essentially, I really can't say that I feel it's been worth it. Obviously it's worth having the degree as a qualification, but in terms of the day-to-day experience of just reading a paper online, writing an essay on the computer, and then Skyping a tutor to talk about it every week, I can't say that I feel that that's made it worth it. So that, of course, has been incredibly disappointing, but I'm glad that I got to have some of this traditional, typical university experience before COVID hit. I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that COVID probably won't have gone away until after I've graduated, so it may well be that that was the last of those experiences that I was going to have. But I'm kind of glad in a way because those experiences were fantastic. And had I known that they were going to be the last ones I was having, I think I would have been like panicking and overthinking and trying to make them the best experiences I could have, the best debates I could have. But because I thought I had more to come, I'd just go to these events, go to these debates, go to the pub, have a good time, go home feeling good. And I'm not too upset about the fact that that's the last university experience that I'll probably remember. But who knows? One of the things that doing this YouTube channel has taught me is to never try to predict where you're going to be in 2 years' time. I mean, I might end up doing a master's at some point or going on to a PhD. I might have more of the university experience ahead of me. I'm just not sure yet. I mean, this channel has taken me to places that I never could have imagined going to. I mean, it's taken me around the world, spoken across 3 different continents, able to meet such incredible people, including people who I kind of used to listen to and read all the time, people like Richard Dawkins and Peter Singer and William Lane Craig. It's been an incredible experience, and the reason I've been able to do it is because people like yourself, people watching this video now, have been watching my videos and pressing that subscribe button and getting us to nearly 400,000 subscribers. So I can only hope that the channel continues to grow and continues to do new and exciting things. And if it does, if it manages to do so, it's because of people like you. So thank you, thanks again, thanks for 400,000 subscribers. Thanks for being here, especially if you've been a subscriber for a long time. And a special thanks, as always, to my top tier patrons. If you like the content that I'm putting out, please do consider becoming a supporter of the channel at patreon.com/Cosmic Skeptic. But in the meantime, I have been Alex O'Connor, or Cosmic Skeptic. Here's to 500,000 subscribers. We'll get there eventually. I'll see you in the next one.